freak out. See, push it 8 times on your side. I think maybe the computer is just a little stone. Yeah.
Okay, I'm with the Columbia Lake Stewardship Society. I didn't discuss this with the Tara beforehand. My presentation is going to be a little bit on the technical side. I hope that's not out of the realm of your objectives. But anyway.
Well, if you get booed off the stage.
Okay. Okay, next.
Yeah.
Okay, this is a view of, am I standing in your way?
No.
Of Columbia Lake, which is our mandate. The lake, this is looking from the south to north. Canal Flats is down here. The Kootenai River comes in. It doesn't join the lake. It bypasses to the south. Up here is Fairmont Hot Springs. Further north is the Columbia River. It drains into Lake Windermere, which Dale was just talking about. And if you go out another 90 miles, you come to Golden. All of that area is wetland along the Columbia River. The Dutch Creek comes in here. On the east side, there was a study done by East Kootenai Integrated, whatever it was, evaluating the ecological value. This is rated as high value here. You get moderate value here. And this area over here was low value, mainly because there's a railroad along here, which has affected the local ecology. This is Highway 93, 95. The lake is shallow. The deepest point is probably not 6 meters. So and the deep point is up in here somewhere. And this is all fairly shallow down here.
Can I ask just a question about the color?
Yes.
Is that real color in the photograph? Like, is that just where it's so shallow? The green?
Well, it is shallow down there. This is from probably from Google Maps, so I don't know.
That's probably 2 different photos.
Yes, 2 photos.
So what's in the middle?
Yeah.
That's the name.
Yeah.
Oh, that's just the name. Oh.
Yeah. Okay, next. We're engaged in 3 areas. I'm not going to cover them all because my specialty is water quality. I'm going to focus on that. But the rest of these are very important as well. We do education outreach, maybe done by Tracy Flynn, who's very active. She's out just about every day doing something. So she does a lot of work. Water quality monitoring and water quantity monitoring. In the education outreach, we have education programs. Tracy's into some of the schools, down to the marinas. We have 2 marinas, which I should have pointed out. With a concern with invasive species, so we put signage up around the marinas to help educate people about bringing boats and life jackets, particularly white water-infested life jackets into the area, or wet life jackets. And then we have an area along the east coast of the lake, which is important shoreline and riparian area. She liaison with local communities, and she's active with the regional district ministry. Across the lake is the Nature Conservancy of Canada, Lake Windermere ambassadors, and the wetland group to the north. Let's look at the water quality monitoring. We have 4 sites. One up near this marina, located here, is a private marina. Another one at the deepest point in the lake. One further south. I should have pointed out there's agriculture areas along here and nothing here. And the 4th one is just off the marina down at Canal Flats. This is really the only legal access point for motorized boats. So a fair amount of motorized activity down in this area. Next. We've monitored for 3 years. It's usually the usual parameters: water depth, temperature, turbidity, conductance, pH, dissolved oxygen. Like I've got pH in twice. We've compliance with the Lake Windermere objectives, which are downstream. We don't have our own objectives, and so far we've determined that the lake is healthy. But the main thing is that we do have a baseline of data, of water quality data, which we didn't have before. Let's switch over to water quantity monitoring. We have 3 water level stations. One is an old Water Survey of Canada station up in this area here. We have another one on Dutch Creek. We have a rain gauge on in a community called Timber Springs. And over in this area, we have a lake level monitoring station. There's another one. There's a underground water coming from the Kootenai River. We have a station down here, which is in the attempt to monitor that flow. And I should point it out, but the north end of the lake it becomes rather confused, but it's rather important too. This is Dutch Creek. The lake is here. This is a community with a marina up here. Dutch Creek comes in here. It's difficult to see, but it flows across here. This is a larger alluvial fan, and the channels here varies from year to year, but it's been very stationary here since at least 1975. The Columbia River drains from the lake and goes north. So at low water, the creek bypassing the lake at present. Next.
Do you want to just ask them if they can hear you okay better? I moved it over there so they can hear you better on the webinar. Just so you know, they're watching you from that end now.
Okay.
Looks like they're good. No comments.
Maybe I should stand over here.
No.
Okay, the 3 stream locations which I referred to, we have data loggers monitoring at hourly intervals. They're non-vented type, so we have to measure the atmospheric pressure as well and the lake level. And last year, in 2016, we got a flow meter, so we can measure the current. As a result, for those of you who have a hydrological background, the essential point of all this work is to come up with rating curves so you can get the volume discharge from the rivers. And we're at 2 sites, the outflow, which is on the Columbia River, which is referred to here as the Water Survey of Canada site. This is the original Water Survey of Canada rating curve. This is our own. There's a reasonable match. So it demonstrates that we have some idea of what we're doing, even though it's not quite perfect. With the rating curves, this allows us to go back from the water level data we've collected with the loggers and determine the flow which is taking place. So this is really determines the amount of water leaving the lake for a given water level. And we've done the same with Dutch Creek. Dutch Creek is very turbulent and very dangerous to work with, so the fit is not quite so good, and we don't have many high-level points. We're going to try to fix that this year, but it means we have to operate over a highway bridge. We've got to get the highways department to shut down the lane while we do that. This gives some indication of what's taking place. The green line is the lake level. This is the blue line is the flow coming into the lake from Dutch Creek. The red line is the outflow. And you can see over here that nothing really takes place in the lake. In fact, the inflow and outflow are almost the same. Then once the threshold is reached, we start to see water coming in, an excess of water coming into the lake, and the lake starts to rise, as you might expect. There are various peaks here due to periods of meltwater or melt from the snowpack, probably some rain. And once the peak is reached, the lake starts to the lake declines, and these decline as well, except that the decline at Dutch Creek is less. Okay, nothing really starting there. You would expect that, but next slide. This one is rather complicated, and the message here is that the water, the rise in Columbia Lake, which is what people are really interested in, rises through about 1 meter on average each year, is determined largely from Dutch Creek. The rest of the inflow is not nearly as significant. So Dutch Creek is an important area to be considered in any plans dealing with the water level in the Columbia Lake. So the lake level then is determined by the flow from Dutch Creek. The Dutch Creek flow bypass the lake when the flows are low, and the Dutch Creek is very highly responsive to rainfall and snow events. Again, if you're a hydrologist, it's probably common knowledge, but for those who are doing planning, it's perhaps not quite so well known. The implications of all this is that under a climate change scenario, if you're a follower of climate change, that means that the snow lines will gradually increase. The flow, instead of coming off in surges, will come off more gradually. Probably it means more of the flow will be coming from Dutch Creek, will bypass to the north, and the lake won't rise quite so fast, quite so high. In fact, there'll be a gradual decline. That means the wetland and riparian areas on the east side of the area of the lake will be impacted, and probably downstream as well. And there will be economic and social consequences. And even though we're interested mainly in the environment, there will be pushback from those engaged in economic and social areas, which will have an impact on the environment. In other words, there'll eventually be conflicts which have to be resolved. And by collecting this data, then we're providing some sound information for those decision makers in the future, with which they can make sound, informed decisions.
Bill, is this a good time for questions from the webinar people?
Sure.
So Adam Sutherland is asking, have you considered monitoring, in addition to quality and quantity, the variations between years in timing of the flows?
Yes, in time. This will be a long-term project, assuming that we were able to maintain funding from year to year. It's always hard when you're doing this sort of thing, to convince people that these are long-term endeavors, not just from year to year. We hopefully sometime after I'm finished, somebody will take over and will continue to monitor.
Awesome. Does that answer your question, Adam? Sounds like. Yes. Happy.
Who is your funder, and how do you go about trying to measure the underground flow from Columbia River?
Well, we have a hydrogeologist with us. He applied for a grant last year to do well surveys, and he's looking at the elevations, but the funding was refused. So we have to go back again and either look for another source or try again next year. But we do expect that there will be, well, we know that there's an underground flow. We don't know how much. It's got to be quantified. But you can tell from one of those graphs that it's much smaller than the flow coming out of Dutch Creek.
But you do that by looking at well levels?
Yes.
And your funding right now?
We don't have funding, no.
For the other monitoring?
For the other monitors, it's coming from the Columbia Valley Local Conservation Fund. Richard?
Bill, I know you skipped over one graph, but I was wondering, just in general, was that one graph on water quality, was that a water balance? Because you're measuring outflow, you're measuring the lake level, you're measuring the inflow. The difference will be what's coming in through the...
Yeah, well, there's other factors there too. There's the precipitation on the lake, and there's evaporation, and evaporation loss probably exceeds the precipitation gain on the lake, because the humidity is quite low and it's quite windy there. So you can lose up to maybe even 2 centimeters a day on a hot, windy day.
It's a beautiful case for modeling. Yeah.
Oh.
Garth?
Well, I noticed on your rating curve for Dutch Creek, you had what appeared to be a measurement way up at the very top. Did you actually measure it at the top end?
No, we didn't do it ourselves, but someone else did. And I can't tell you that it was done by a private firm and we're able to get the data. I can't tell you how they did it or where they did it. But I'm sure they didn't wade the river, and there's no cableways there, so they must have operated off the bridge.
Yeah, or they could have had a ADCP acoustic Doppler.
Yeah, maybe.
I did have a question on this same thing. That water site of Canada, or that site, the rating curve difference. Do you think that the site could have changed? Do you think that that's like explaining some of that diversion there?
Yes, well, if you have a major flood, it changes the cross section of the river, so the channels do change. So these things will naturally change, but Columbia River is fairly stable, so I wouldn't expect a lot of change from year to year. But Dutch Creek, I would.
I was curious about the instruments that you're using, and if they're the same instruments that Water Survey Canada is using to measure Columbia River.
Well, okay, Columbia River there was a station there for 50-some years, and it was shut down, I think, about 1908 or thereabouts. And then they brought a bulldozer in and pushed it all down. But when we were looking around for a site, we went back there and I discovered that we could actually pull all the garbage out, and the intake was still there in the Cape Caosson. So we just stuck a pipe in there and a logger. And
so you're using next to them well.
we're using the same well.
But if they're doing the flow measurements itself, I was wondering if you're
Well, our equipment isn't quite as sophisticated as Water Survey of Canada's, but we do have a proper flow meter. We probably don't stick around long enough to do the 3 levels that they do. We just monitor at one level. Actually, Garth has done that to his career, so if you want to talk about that sort of thing,
Any other questions for Bill? I think people really like the technical stuff. Garth? It's I've got which Avery can find your pictures, and then the Garth is with East Shore Freshwater, which is downstream.
Are you using the clicker or right here? Well, that's okay. That's okay. I've only got about 3 or 4 pictures. East Shore Freshwater Habitat was formed about 4 years ago. We now have over 200 members from Boswell to Riendell, and the primary purpose was to try to increase the kokanee habitat in all the local creeks, because 75% of the spawn of kokanee in Columbia Lake, in the main lake, comes from a man-made spawning ground up at Meadow Creek. So it just didn't seem reasonable that we should let all these creeks, man-made floods, things that demolish the spawning grounds. So we're trying to